everyone. Happy Tuesday evening, 10:30 p.m. on the East Coast. Um, Welcome again. My name is Trish. If it's your first time here, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Witch C, right back there. And beside me here is the Blue Witch, who you are all here to see to talk about beginner shadow work. So that's super exciting tonight. And then for one lucky live attendee tonight, we will be giving away out of our two Sisters of the Harvest Moon shop a shadow work road opener box. So I'll post that on our Witch C Facebook page. So make sure you're following us there, and I'll post that tomorrow morning, probably around 10ish. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the Blue Witch, and we're going to learn about shadow working tonight.
Okay. So my little side thing over here with the chat, it sometimes lags on me. So if I don't see I just don't really look at it much cuz it always takes a second for it to catch up. But before we get into anything, you guys already know that I like to slow everybody down for a little bit. So shadow work has a reputation, and most of that reputation is not helpful at all. A lot of people come into shadow work thinking that it's going to be like intense or painful, emotionally brutal, or that they're just going to uncover something horrible about themselves that they can't unsee. Like, like you're opening a door and whatever's behind it's going to jump out and ruin your life. The fear alone surrounding that keeps people stuck for years. So I just want to say this like right at the beginning and get it out of the way that shadow work is not about discovering that you are secretly a terrible person. It's just not about that. It's about realizing that parts of you learn to survive in environments that didn't always make room for your full humanity to exist. That's a very, very different thing. Most people don't avoid shadow work because they're lazy or unhealed. They avoid it because they didn't feel safe enough yet in their body, in their life, in their nervous system to look inward without bracing for impact. And a lot of that has to do with videos that circulate. People are crying and they're like, I had this crazy breakthrough. And I mean, honestly, with all the false information that circulates about it, it makes sense that people feel the way they do. So if you're here, yeah, please don't be stuck there. Do not be stuck in fear. See, oh my goodness. So if you're here, you're not behind, you're not late, you're not finally fixing yourself. You're just at a point where curiosity is louder than fear. That's all. So just to like clear that up, what we actually mean when we say the shadow, because that term gets thrown around like everyone automatically knows what it means, and most people actually don't. Your shadow is not the worst parts of you. It's not your dark side in a villain way. It's not evil or corrupt or broken. Your shadow is made up of the parts of you that didn't feel safe enough to be fully expressed at some point in your life. Usually when you were younger, sometimes later, sometimes repeatedly. Anything that threatened your sense of safety, belonging, or love and got tucked away, not destroyed, not healed, just hidden. You learned really fast what was rewarded and what wasn't. I am just going to, just curious, yep. I'm just going to let you know right now that I'm gonna go through this information super fast because I have a lot of it. I'm gonna try not to run over. I'm gonna keep an eye on the time this time, but I don't know if I'm gonna make it through everything. So we're just going to spring off. If you need to rewatch the replay, like if you need to watch the replay again to catch everything, please go do that. So if being emotional got you dismissed or punished, you learned to shut it down. If being angry caused conflict or rejection, you learned to swallow it. Um, if having needs made you feel like a burden, you learn to stop asking. If being confident got you criticized, you learn to just stay small. That's not weakness, that's intelligence. It's how humans adapt. Your nervous system did exactly what it was designed to do, to keep you safe in the environment that you were in. The shadow is not a collection of bad traits. It's a storage space of adaptations, right? And those adaptations don't disappear just because your life changes. They stick around until they're updated. That's what shadow work actually is: updating old survival strategies that no longer fit the life that you're living now. Here's the part that most people don't hear early enough in their journey. Your shadow is not trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you from you're just using outdated information. So when someone says my shadow keeps ruining my relationships, what they usually mean is a part of me learned something a long time ago that doesn't work anymore and it's still running the show. Shadow work isn't about killing that part off, it's about listening to it long enough that it doesn't have to scream. Oh, no, no, no crying, no crying. If you cry, I cry. We're all going to cry. Nobody can cry alone. What is that? What is that movie? Steel Magnolias? Nobody can cry alone. But yeah, shadow work isn't about like killing that part off. Before we go any further, I just want to set a really important boundary about this work because I know most of you probably know this, but I need to say it anyways. Shadow work is not therapy. It can support healing, but it is not a replacement for professional mental health care. And more importantly, shadow work does not require you to relive your trauma or to unpack every painful memory or emotional overwhelm. It doesn't have to do that to be effective. If you've ever seen shadow work framed as dig until it hurts, that's not healing. That's reactivation. This work only works when your system feels safe enough to stay present. If at any point while doing this kind of inner work, you feel flooded or panicky, disassociated or numb, or like you're spiraling, that is a sign to slow down and stop. Anything you do after that point is going to be pointless anyways. It's not going to work. It's not doing anything for you. Capacity matters more than bravery. Shadow work is a relationship, not an interrogation. A lot of people approach it like they're cross examining themselves. Why am I like this? What's wrong with me? Where did this come from? And that tone will shut parts of you down. You don't build trust with parts of yourself by cornering them. You can't build trust with anything that way. You build trust by being curious without judgment. That means not judging yourself. And this is where a lot of beginners get tripped up because they think that shadow work is about fixing behaviors, and it's not. Not at first. You can fix your behaviors, but that's not what it's about at first. It's about understanding why the behavior exists. Change comes after understanding, not before. Most shadow parts are acting out because they haven't been acknowledged in a long time. They're like, hey, I'm still here. This still matters. And when you ignore them, they just get louder. When you shame them, they get sneakier. When you meet them with curiosity, though, they soften. That's how nervous systems work. Now, let's talk about what shadow work actually looks like in real life because honestly, it's rarely dramatic or obvious. Shadow material usually shows up sideways. It shows up in overreactions, in being more triggered than a situation calls for, in judging other people really harshly, in repeating patterns that you swear you're done with, in saying, I don't care, when you absolutely do. You care. Anytime your reaction is bigger than the moment, there's probably a shadow piece involved. And that doesn't mean that your reaction is wrong. It just means something older is being touched. Shadow work is learning to pause in those moments and go, okay, something deeper just got activated here. Not, I'm bad for feeling this. Not, I need to stop this immediately. Just awareness. Awareness creates space. Space creates choices. And awareness does not mean acting on everything you feel. You can acknowledge anger without exploding. You can recognize jealousy without feeding it. You can understand a defensive reaction without letting it run your relationships. Shadow work doesn't remove responsibility, it increases it, but in a humane way. So I saw some comments over here. Let's talk about fear, because fear is the biggest blocker here. Honestly, most people are afraid that if they look too closely, they're going to find something unforgivable. Like, what if I realize I'm selfish? Um, what if I'm actually a bad person? What if I don't like what I see? But avoiding your shadow doesn't make you better. It just makes you less conscious. Unconscious patterns still are going to run your life. They just do it quietly. Shadow work brings those patterns into awareness so that you actually get a say so. Most shadow discoveries are deeply, deeply ordinary. They're boring. It's things like, I learned that I wasn't allowed to need help. I learned that conflict meant abandonment. I learned that love was conditional. I learned that being seen wasn't safe. That's not monstrous, that's human. And once you understand that, a lot of the shame starts to melt away. Another thing beginners don't get told enough is that shadow work is not just about your negative traits. A lot of people have shadowed their joy, their confidence, their desires, their ambitions, and creativity. If being happy made someone else uncomfortable in your life, you learn to dim that. If being confident got you criticized, maybe you shrinked it. If wanting more got you labeled as ungrateful, you probably learned to settle. Those parts go into hiding in the shadow too. Shadow work isn't about becoming softer or nicer or calmer. It's about becoming more whole as a person. Now, because this is foundational, I was reading, because this is foundational, I do want to say something here. You do not need to dive into your deepest wounds to do meaningful shadow work. In fact, I don't recommend it at all. We start with surface level stuff, the everyday reactions, the mild triggers, the moments where you catch yourself and think, why did that bother me so much? And I'm going to explain to you why you want to start with surface level things. Shadow work builds tolerance. Your capacity to sit with discomfort will grow over time. If you go straight for the deepest pain without any practice, your nervous system will shut down the whole thing. And that's not healing. That's self-protection doing its job again. You're recycling. You're doing the same thing again. So the goal here is not to excavate everything. The goal is to learn how to stay present with yourself without judging yourself. That skill alone will change everything for you. So before we move forward, I want to do something really simple. No analysis, no fixing. Just notice your body right now. Notice your breath. Notice if you have anything tightened or softened while you were listening. Notice if any part of you felt seen or resistant or curious or skeptical. You don't need to label it. What you felt isn't really as important. Just notice. That's awareness. That's already the doorway. We're going to keep walking through that slowly, intentionally, without forcing anything that isn't ready yet. So now that you've got kind of like a feel for what the shadow actually is, the next thing that we need to talk about is how it communicates, because this is where most people completely miss it. Shadow parts almost never show up saying, "Hi, I'm your unresolved childhood pattern." That would be way too convenient and easy, right? They show up as reactions, as habits, internal commentary you barely notice because it's been running in the background for so long that it feels like you. This is why people say things like, that's just how I am. I've always been like this. That's just my personality. 9 times out of 10, that's not personality. It's it's protection. Shadow parts communicate through sensation first, not language. Your body usually knows something's been activated before your brain does. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops, your jaw clenches. Maybe you make a fist in your hand, your shoulders creep up towards your ears. And then the story kicks in, right? This is stupid. They're disrespecting me. I don't care. I'm fine. Whatever. That story feels immediate and true, which is why people assume that it is the truth. But shadow work teaches you to slow the moment down enough to just notice that sequence. Sensation first, then interpretation, then reaction. If you can catch it anywhere in that chain for half a second, you're already doing the work. Shadow work starts in the body, not the mind. A lot of beginners think shadow work is journaling until they have an epiphany, which journaling can be helpful. I'm not discrediting journaling at all. But if you're disconnected from your body, you're going to intellectualize the hell out of everything you ever actually touch. Like, you're not even going to work with your shadow because you're going to overanalyze it so much. You'll understand yourself beautifully, but you'll still repeat the same patterns. That's because shadow parts don't live in logic. They live in your nervous system. They have formed before you had language for what was happening, before you had choices, before you could reason your way through things. So when a shadow part gets activated, reasoning with it does not work right away. You can't logic a nervous system into feeling safe. You have to show it. This is where beginners usually get uncomfortable because it requires slowing down instead of figuring things out right away. We always want to figure things out right away. We're very trained to think that we're trained to think through. We're trained to think through our emotions instead of feeling them. Shadow work asks you to do the exact opposite, gently and at your own pace. Now let's talk about what not to do, because I'm going to save you guys a lot of grief here. Do not jump straight into why. Why am I like this? Why do I do this? Why does this bother me? Why is a sharp question. It can feel interrogating to shadow parts, especially early on. A much safer place to start is what? If you want to journal this. What am I feeling right now? What changed in my body just now? What does this reaction want me to know? What invites information? Why demands justification? Shadow work works better when it feels like curiosity, not cross examination. Another common mistake is trying to get rid of your shadow parts. People say things like, I'm trying to heal from my people pleasing, or I want to get rid of my anger issues, or I don't want to be so sensitive. Here's the thing: shadow parts don't disappear when you tell them they're inconvenient. They either go underground or they get louder. Most behaviors that you're trying to eliminate started as solutions. They solved a problem at one point in time. People pleasing kept you safe. Anger kept you defended. Numbing kept you functioning. Hyper independence kept you from being disappointed. If you try to rip those strategies away without offering something safer in their place, your system is going to resist it hard. Shadow work is not subtraction, it's integration. When you're not removing parts of yourself, you're updating their role. That means listening before changing anything. This is where self-compassion comes in, and I know that word gets eye rolls, but stay with me here. Self-compassion and shadow work is not everything's fine energy. It's, I see why this exists energy. You can acknowledge that a behavior is no longer serving you and respect why it formed at the same time. Those two things are not opposites. So let's talk about a really important distinction that beginners struggle with: shadow work versus self-judgment. Because they feel similar at first, but they're not the same thing at all. Self-judgment sounds like, I shouldn't feel this way. What's wrong with me? I'm so toxic. I'm failing at healing. Shadow work sounds like, something in me feels threatened. This reaction makes sense in context. I wonder what this part needs. If your inner dialogue gets a harsher, um, if it gets harsher, the more self aware you become, that's not shadow work. Real shadow work feels grounding even when it's uncomfortable. You might feel tender, you might feel exposed, you might feel emotional, but you shouldn't feel attacked by yourself. And if you do, it means that you just need to slow down. Shadow work done too fast turns into self surveillance. You start watching yourself constantly. You notice everything. You analyze every thought, every feeling, every reaction. And that's not healing. It's just exhausting. That is exhausting. This work is meant to bring you closer to yourself, not make you hyper vigilant. So here's a reframe that helps a lot of beginners. Instead of thinking of shadow parts as problems, think of them as protective messengers. They show up when something feels familiar to an old threat. The threat might not be real anymore, but the response is. Your job is not to shut the messenger up. Your job is to update them on the present moment. That's where grounding comes back in, not as a technique, but as a way of orienting. This is happening now. I'm safe enough in this moment. I have more choices than I used to. You don't have to convince yourself of these things. You just have to let your body register them. That's why shadow work is slow. It's slow by design. Everybody wants fast results, but this is shadow work. It never ends. It's years and years and years. There's no stopping point. Everyone promising fast, dramatic, transformative change through shadow work is selling adrenaline. Integration is subtle, it's quiet, it shows up as slightly different choices made over time. You pause before reacting, you notice earlier, you recover faster, you're less hard on yourself when you slip. That is progress, not constant emotional breakthroughs. Let's talk about you self sabotage yourself if you work too fast. Yes, absolutely. Let's talk about readiness because this matters more than people think. You don't do shadow work. This is going to bother some people, but you don't do shadow work because you want to. You do it because you're resourced enough at the time to. Resources can be things like emotional stability, supportive relationships, basic self regulation skills, a sense of safety in your current life. If your life is actively chaotic or unsafe, shadow work might not be the best priority right now, and that's okay. Stability comes first, always. Shadow work asks you to look inward. If everything around you is on fire, your system is not going to want to do that. That's not failure, it's wisdom. That's how your system is protecting you. That's what nervous systems do. And even when you are ready, shadow work doesn't have to be constant. You don't need to be doing the work all the time. Sometimes the most healing thing you can do is rest, play, or focus on something external. Integration happens in the pauses. So before we move forward, I just want to offer you a small internal shift that changes how this whole process feels. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? Try asking, what happened to me that made this make sense? That question alone removes a ton of shame. You're not defective. You're adapted, and adaptations can be honored and updated. We're not trying to become perfect, healed humans who never get triggered. We're learning how to respond to ourselves with curiosity instead of punishment. That's the foundation everything else builds on. Take just a second here, let your body catch up, grab something to drink. I'm going to grab something to drink. Don't judge me. I'm a Mountain Dew-aholic, but grab something to drink real quick before we move into the next layer. Because then we're going to talk about how to consciously engage with the shadow parts without opening emotional floodgates. Okay. Also, we're also going to talk about how to create enough internal safety that this work actually sticks instead of burning you out. I seen Christina's comment down here, so maybe that will help you out with that once we get there. Um, So we're going to get into the part that most people think shadow work is, actually engaging with the shadow. But we're going to do it in a way that doesn't blow your nervous system out or turn into self-criticism disguised as insight. This is where intention matters a lot, because the way you approach a shadow part determines whether it opens up or shuts the door in your face. Think about it like this. If someone walked up to you on the street and said, explain yourself. Why are you like this? You would probably tense up immediately. Even if they weren't yelling, even if they sounded calm, your body would still read it as a threat. Shadow parts are the same way. They don't respond to force, they respond to safety. So instead of imagining shadow work as digging or excavating, I want you to imagine it as inviting someone to sit down. You're not dragging anything into the light, you're creating conditions where it feels okay to step forward. That's a very different kind of energy. This is where a lot of people accidentally turn shadow work into control. They're trying to manage themselves better, be more healed, be less reactive, be more evolved. That pressure alone will keep shadow parts locked up. Shadow work works best when the goal is understanding, not optimization. So let's talk about how you actually notice a shadow part without spiraling. The easiest entry point is not your past, it's your present. Shadow parts show up in moments where your reaction feels bigger than the situation. Not wrong, just big. Someone doesn't text back and suddenly your chest is tight. Your brain is spinning. Someone gives you mild feedback and you feel defensive for hours. Someone crosses a small boundary and you either freeze or explode. Those moments are invitations, not to judge yourself, not to fix it, but just to notice. Instead of asking, why am I overreacting? Try something softer like, what feels threatened right now? What does this reaction seem to be protecting? What does this part think might happen? You're not looking for a perfect answer. You're listening for, I guess, in a way to explain it, you're listening for tone. Sometimes the answer comes as words, sometimes it comes as an image, sometimes it's just a feeling. Pressure, heat, sadness, fear, all of that is valid. Shadow parts don't always communicate in full senses, they communicate in sensations and impulses. Now, here's something important: you don't have to agree with the shadow part. Listening does not mean that you're handing at the steering wheel. A shadow part might be convinced that being vulnerable will lead to abandonment. That doesn't mean that it's true now, it means that it was true then. Your job is to hold both realities at once. I understand why you think this, and also things are different now. That's integration. This is where people get tripped up and think that shadow work means indulging every impulse, and it doesn't. You can validate the feeling without validating the behavior. That distinction is huge. So let's talk about pacing, because this is where people accidentally hurt themselves. Shadow work is not something that you need to do for hours at a time. When you're already emotionally raw, that's a recipe for overwhelm. Short, contained moments work better. 5 minutes of honest noticing is way more powerful than an hour of spiraling analysis. If you're journaling, stop before you feel fried. If you're reflecting, pause when you notice tension increasing. If you feel disassociated or numb, that's your cue to ground. Shadow work should leave you feeling slightly tender, but more connected, not wrecked. Your perception is different in the present than it was in the past. Yes, but that past creates it. So you just have to give yourself that time to stop. And it doesn't happen, even that, because I'm talking about these pauses, even the pauses don't happen right away. You have to consciously make yourself pause. Eventually that comes easier. But when you're first noticing something or you first figure out why, you have to make yourself stop and think about that. Um, And then the goal is to catch yourself every time you do it. Like I said, in either one of the timeline, the different steps through it, if you catch it in any part of that, you're doing what you need to do, because you're going to eventually you're going to keep catching it. You're going to keep catching it. You're going to keep catching it. You're going to keep catching it, and you're going to correct yourself and correct yourself and correct yourself until eventually it doesn't bother you anymore. It's not that it doesn't exist or it never happened or that it's gone now, but you now know where it comes from, why it's there, and how to deal with it. And unfortunately, everybody thinks that it's like this, that you're just going to have this big epiphany like, "Oh, that's why I do that, and I'm never going to do that again. I'm just going to correct it now." Sometimes there's no correction. You don't know how to fix it. That's okay. You still acknowledge it. You acknowledge it to the point that you're like, you'll start to catch it before it happens. So you don't have the big explosions. You don't have the overreactions. You don't have the stress and the anxiety and the crazy stuff that comes along with that. It just doesn't affect you in the same way anymore. That is shadow work. It's not the sitting and journaling. It's not the working through it immediately. It's not the trying to figure things out. It's just accepting yourself and then trying to be better. That's really all it is. Um, if you consistently feel worse after doing it, something needs to be adjusted. But let's talk about one of the most misunderstood pieces of shadow work, and that's resistance. Resistance is not failure. Resistance is communication. If you sit down to do inner work and suddenly feel bored or irritated, distracted, or like this is stupid, this that doesn't mean that you're bad at shadow work. It usually means that a part of you doesn't feel safe engaging yet. That part might be tired or protective or afraid of what might come up. Instead of pushing through that, just try acknowledging it, and that's it. Something in me doesn't want to do this right now. That alone can soften the resistance. Forcing shadow work almost always backfires. You might get information, but you won't get integration. Integration only happens when parts feel respected. People see others doing shadow work and having these big emotional releases, crying breakthroughs, like we were talking about, life changing realizations. And then they sit down with themselves and they feel nothing and they think there's something wrong. It does not mean you're blocked. It usually just means that your system learned to stay functional at all costs. Some nervous systems express things, some contain things. Everybody is different. Neither one is wrong. Shadow work doesn't have to be dramatic to be effective. Some of the deepest shifts happen very quietly. You might notice that you don't react as fast, that you catch yourself sooner, that you choose differently without forcing it. Over time, you start doing things that you had to catch yourself before you did it before. That's integration. That's happening under the surface. You're not always aware that it's happening. That's why it seems like such slow progress. No longer have, uh-oh, are we having a problem in my back? No longer have sound.
I can hear you just fine.
You can hear me?
Yeah, you
Okay.
didn't glitch for me at all.
Okay. I was just like, oh no, nobody can hear me. Um, so let's talk about something that people don't love hearing. But it matters. Shadow work does not make you nicer. It makes you more honest. Sometimes that honesty looks like realizing that you're angry about something that you've been minimizing for years. Sometimes it looks like acknowledging resentment that you didn't want to admit was there. Sometimes it looks like realizing you've been abandoning yourself to keep the peace. Shadow work doesn't create those feelings, it reveals them. And revealing them doesn't mean acting them out. It means you stop pretending that they aren't there. That honesty can feel destabilizing at first, especially if you've built your identity around being fine. But it's also deeply relieving. A lot of people don't realize how much energy you're spending suppressing themselves until they stop. Like, let's talk about safety again because it keeps coming back up for a reason. If you have a history of trauma, especially developmental or relational trauma, shadow work needs to be extra gentle. You're not trying to rip open old wounds. You're building trust with yourself, and that means grounding before you reflect, not after, and simple things. Noticing your breath, feeling your feet on the floor, orienting to the room, reminding yourself where you are and what time it is. These are spiritual techniques. They're nervous system cues. They tell your body, we're here, not there. We're here. We're not where that stuff happened to us before that triggers these reactions. That distinction keeps shadow work from turning into reliving. If at any point you feel like you are slipping into the past instead of observing from the present, you need to pause. Shadow work should feel like remembering with support, not being dragged back through it. So that's just something to remember. You're not obligated to work with every shadow part. Some parts are ready to be engaged with, and some are not. Readiness matters. If a part feels completely overwhelming or terrifying or destabilizing, that's not a challenge to conquer. It's a boundary, and you need to respect that. 2 years, and it's always been in the background and working with my inner child. That's very comforting, and notice the progress. Yes, it's a slow progress. It is a slow progress, and you don't always notice it in the moment. Um, you don't get bonus points for pushing past your limits either. The goal is long term integration, not short term intensity. Shadow work's cumulative, it's small moments that add up. So now I want to name something that tends to come up around this stage, and that is grief. As you start to understand your shadow, you might feel grief for what you didn't get, for how long you had to adapt, for the parts of yourself that went quiet to keep you safe. That grief is normal. It doesn't mean you're regressing. It doesn't mean you're acknowledging reality. So if you do start to feel grief, I want you to just stop and think about it for a second and use some discernment to ask yourself, is the grief that I'm feeling right now because I'm putting myself back into the past, because that's not what you want to do? Or is it because I feel bad for this person that I was? You need to keep that separation. You're not there anymore. Um, let yourself feel it in manageable doses. You don't have to drown in it to honor it. And here's something that surprises a lot of people too. Shadow work often leads to more compassion for others, not less. I don't know why some people think that it would be less, but it's not. And it's not because you excuse harmful behaviors in other people, but because you start seeing the adaptations underneath their behaviors. You understand without absorbing, and that's maturity. So before we move forward, I want to say this really clearly. Shadow work is not about becoming endlessly self-focused. The goal is not to analyze yourself forever. The goal is to understand yourself well enough that you can be present in your life without constantly fighting your own reactions. At some point, the work becomes lived, not studied. And that's where things really start to shift. Once you've been doing your shadow work for a while, the hardest part isn't facing the uncomfortable stuff anymore. It's sitting with the quiet. And nobody warns you about that. There's this like weird middle phase where the chaos dies down, the constant emotional spikes calm a little bit, and suddenly you're left with this space, and that space can feel very unsettling, like really unsettling, if you're used to operating in survival mode. When you've spent years reacting, fixing, managing, bracing, anticipating, stillness can feel wrong. Like like you're missing something, like you should be doing something more. That's also not regression. You need to stop and think about what exactly you're feeling. That's your system learning what neutral feels like. And neutral can feel boring at first. A lot of people at this stage, believe this or not, a lot of people start unconsciously creating problems, more problems, because they don't know how to be at peace with it yet. They pick fights, they overthink, they spiral, they nitpick themselves, they reopen old wounds that don't actually need to be reopened. This is where that discernment comes in again. Not everything that pops up needs to be processed. Not every feeling needs a deep dive. Not every discomfort is shadow material. Sometimes it's just your nervous system learning a new baseline. And this is where shadow work shifts from excavating to maintenance. Maintenance is less dramatic, it's quieter, it's more subtle. It's honestly where most people either mature in their practice or abandon it because it's not flashy anymore. Maintenance looks like noticing your inner dialogue before it spirals. It looks like catching self abandonment early. It looks like saying no without a full emotional justification essay in your brain. You don't have to justify every time you say no. It's not about digging deeper, it's about staying present. So, going back to the grief thing, even positive change brings grief. You might grieve the version of yourself that survived with coping mechanisms that you don't need anymore. You might grieve relationships that can't meet you where you are now. You might lose some things. You might grieve the illusion that healing would make everything clear and easy. That grief doesn't mean that the work failed. It means that you're honest enough to feel the cost of growth. So let's talk about self trust, because this is where shadow work actually lands long term. Self trust doesn't mean that you never doubt yourself. It means you don't abandon yourself because of doubt. It means when something comes up, you don't immediately assume that you're wrong or broken or dramatic or regressing. You get curious instead of critical. You ask, what is being asked of me here, instead of what's wrong with me. And once you have that relationship with yourself, external validation loses its grip. Not because you don't care what people think anymore, but because their opinion no longer overrides your inner knowing. That is huge. That's also why shadow work can feel threatening to systems that benefit from you being disconnected from yourself. When you trust yourself, you stop being easily controlled. You stop over explaining. You stop outsourcing your intuition. You stop shrinking to stay safe. And that can change the dynamics around you. Some people are going to celebrate that you know, some people won't. That's not your job to manage that, though. Another thing that I really want to name here, I'm keeping an eye on my time, so I'm trying to squeeze stuff in. Another thing that I really want to name, shadow work doesn't turn you into a monk. You're still going to have bad days. You're still going to snap sometimes. You're still going to fall into old patterns under stress. Progress isn't linear. It's, that was my phone, it's relational. So, how quickly you notice, how gently you repair, how honestly you reflect on things, that is the metric that matters. And repair is a big part of this. Repair with others, yes, but also repair with yourself. When you mess up, the old pattern might be shame, might be beating yourself up, spiraling into I should be better at this by now, right? The repaired pattern is saying, okay, that wasn't how I wanted to show up. What do I need to do now? That's a repaired pattern. That's adult energy. That's integration. Let's talk about choice, because this is the core of everything. Shadow work gives you choice, but it doesn't force you to use it. You're allowed to still choose comfort sometimes. You're allowed to take the easy route. You're allowed to rest instead of push. Being conscious doesn't mean being rigid. It means you're honest about the choice that you're making. There's a massive difference between I'm avoiding this and I'm choosing not to engage with this right now. One is unconscious and the other one is empowered. And that distinction matters a lot. At, as this work settles into your life, you're going to notice something else shifting: your tolerance for bullshit. Plainly put, there will be no more tolerance for bullshit, especially your own. You'll catch when you're rationalizing something that doesn't align with you anymore. You will feel the subtle internal no before you override it, and you'll have a choice. That's not always comfortable, but it's clean. It's clean discomfort. It's easier to live with chronic it's easier to live with than chronic self-betrayal. um I do want to address something important before we close this out. um the idea that shadow work is something that you eventually finish. You don't. You do not finish this. It just gets, you get better at being with yourself. New layers emerge as your life changes, different parts come online when your circumstances shift. The goal is not completion, it's never completion. It's a relationship with your inner world that's based on one that's based on respect and curiosity and consent. You're allowed to go slow, you're allowed to pause. You're allowed to change your mind. Nothing about this work requires force. If there's one thing that I want you to take from this entire thing, okay, you don't need to be fearless to do shadow work. You just need to be willing to stay. You need to be willing to stay with the feeling a few seconds longer. When you have those reactions, just being able to pause, step away, and sit with that for a few seconds is such a big accomplishment. And I don't think that it gets rewarded enough. Um, Seems to have been on high alert for so long. This is helping. Yeah, you just have to stop and acknowledge it. You're not acknowledging, shadow is just a word. Your shadow parts is just a word. You're not acknowledging a shadow. You're not acknowledging this separate being. You're just acknowledging yourself and what happened to you or why you're acting that way. Give yourself grace. I think I've said that in other webinars. Giving yourself grace is so important. Stay with yourself when it's uncomfortable. Stay present instead of checking out. That willingness compounds over time. And eventually you realize something quietly powerful, that you are not afraid of yourself anymore. That it's not because that everything is healed, but because you trust your capacity to meet whatever shows up. That's the kind of safety that no external system can give you. And once you have that, the rest becomes a lot less scary. Um, I did push through this last little bit here kind of quick because we're at 46 minutes and I know that's not an hour, but I'm going to go ahead and start with the pre-submitted questions because there actually was a lot of them, more than I thought there was going to be. So I want to be able to make sure that I make it through all of those and then still catch the live Q&A. So the first question, I'm not going to name anybody by name or call anyone out. I know that you literally commented them in front of each other. I just don't like doing that. So I'm just going to read the questions as they are. And I'm doing them in order. Some of them we've already kind of addressed, but we're just going to hit them again. I don't want anyone to leave confused. So I've heard of shadow work, but I've never done it purposefully. Normally I stumble upon a trigger and I have to deal with it in that moment or chew on it later. How can you purposely discover something that you aren't already aware of? Or is it more about dealing more about dealing more deliberately with what you are aware of? So my answer for that was shadow work isn't usually about discovering some hidden thing that you've never felt before. It's more about slowing down, working on purpose with what already shows up. Triggers, strong reactions, patterns. Instead of brushing them off or spiraling later, you get curious in the moment or after. You're not digging for shadows. You're noticing when they can tap you on the shoulder and choose to listen. Fell on you on Facebook, but oh, that is so sweet. I'm glad you're here and I'm glad you found it. If, by the way, and I didn't say this up front, if you realize that I'm answering your question or whatever, and you say, hey, I asked this and you need clarification, let me know. I'll come back to you if I see it. So, yeah, you're choosing to listen. I'm sorry, that's a lot of talking without wetting my whistle. Okay. The next question was, how can someone tell the difference between productive shadow work and pushing themselves too far before they're ready? You guys asked like really freaking great questions, by the way. So productive shadow work feels uncomfortable, but stabilizing, like insight with a little relief underneath it. Pushing too far feels very overwhelming, dysregulating, or like you're spiraling without clarity. If you're curious and reflective afterwards, you're probably in a good zone. If you're flooded or shut down or stuck in self-judgment, that's a sign that you need to slow down. Shadow work, it should stretch you but not wreck your nervous system. How often should a beginner practice shadow work? Is it something that we should do daily, or is it better to leave space for integration? For beginners, less is more. Shadow work doesn't need to be done daily. That's usually too much, actually. It's too much too fast. Think occasional, intentional check ins, then time to integrate what came up. Real growth happens in the space after the insight, not by constantly digging at yourself. If you're living your life differently because of what you learned, you're doing it right. That is a sure sign of change. It's a sure sign of integration. Doing it daily and just nitpicking yourself apart does more damage than it does good. Let's see here. How can I tell the difference between my shadow self and just a bad mood or temporary insecurity? So a bad mood or insecurity is usually temporary and it passes once you're rested, once you've eaten, once you've regulated. Shadow stuff tends to repeat the same trigger, same reaction, same storyline. It's a pattern. Um, if it feels familiar and it hits a nerve that you felt before, that's likely a shadow. If it feels fleeting and situational, it's probably just being human and having a day. Um, so kind of like checking on our wounds rather than picking at the scab. Yes, yeah, don't pick at the scab. Don't do that. Um, what should I do if I feel a lot of resistance or fear when trying to look at a certain part of my past? So, resistance and fear are information. You are doing shadow work 2 times a day. That's a lot, especially for a beginner. That's a lot of digging in. Sorry, that is a lot. I would not do that. No. Resistance and fear are information, though. Not not a green light to push harder. That usually means that your nervous system didn't feel safe yet, and that part matters. The move isn't forcing insight; it's slowing down, grounding, building safety first. You can always come back to it later. Shadow work works best when it's consensual with yourself. I've been in fight or flight mode for so long, I'm just mentally tired, physically tired. But how do I get out of it being a working mom and wife? Well, honey bun, it just sounds like you need some self care. I'm sorry. I know, I get it. I'm a mom of four. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me see. I lost my spot. Okay, so for someone who struggles with blank page syndrome, what is your favorite shadow work prompt to get the energy flowing for the first time? My favorite starter prompt is, what reaction of mine keeps showing up that I don't like, and what is it trying to protect? That gives you something to concrete, like something concrete to grab onto instead of staring at a blank page. You're not journaling your whole life story, just following one reaction. That's it. It simplifies things a lot more, but it still gives you something to figure out. So once the energy starts moving and you're writing with that, the rest usually just kind of spills out on its own. I do have a suggestion that I just happen to have right here. I don't know if I can get it down though. I got it. So I don't know if you'd be able to find these or something similar, but I got these around Halloween time and I think they're freaking fabulous. They're stickers, they're little cards. It's called Meet Your Shadow Monsters, and they have little prompts on them. But some of these are really rough, but like, I mean, for instance, the spider, in what area of your life are you weaving a web of lies that could eventually entangle someone you love? It's just, little prompts for you to be honest about yourself, but they have lots of stuff like that out there. That one's like one of my favorites though. Um, what is shadow work? I think we've answered that by now. I hope so. But just in case, it is the practice of noticing and working with the parts of yourself that you usually avoid, suppress, or react from without realizing it. It's about getting curious instead of judgmental when triggers, patterns, or big emotions show up. You're not trying to fix yourself, you're trying to understand yourself. The goal is more awareness, choice, and self trust, not perfection. Yeah, the prompted. I'm not gonna lie. I'm a big fan. If you are into the journaling, the prompted things, the cards, the decks, the journals, they're. I have a shadow work journal too. I'll have to. I don't even know if they would be selling it right now if it was like a seasonal thing, but I just know that it's called Meet Your Monsters. Let's see. If you suffer from depression and trauma in your past, how do you keep that trauma from affecting witchcraft when it's trauma that you can't get over, especially when you have a disability that makes it impossible to live life like you want to? Um, Trauma itself doesn't ruin your witchcraft, and you don't need to be over it for your magic to work. It just means that your practice has to support safety and regulation instead of intensity. You want to work with simple, contained magic that's going to work better for you than pushing yourself when your nervous system is overwhelmed. Your magic meets you where you are. It doesn't require you to be healed or able bodied in order to be valid. I am 57 years old. I have really bad long and short term memory issues. There are huge chunks of my life missing that I just don't remember: childhood, teenage years, adult or young adult, and even adulthood. I don't know why doctors can't explain. Will shadow work help unlock memories, or is it just for things that you are already aware of? Shadow work isn't meant to unlock missing memories. It's not a safe way to try and force them back either. Memory gaps are often I don't know your situation. That that's really heavy and it's hard to answer. I don't know your situation. Generally speaking, though, more often than not, your nervous system is protecting you. That when you have memory gaps, not something that you need to dig through. Shadow work focuses on what shows up now: emotions, patterns, reactions, um, not recovering the past memory wise. You can do meaningful shadow work without remembering everything, and nothing's wrong with you for having those gaps, but you don't have to remember everything to do shadow work. If you thought that maybe shadow work would help you, dig those back up, I don't think that it's going to. It's just not how it works. You do suppress things when you're experiencing trauma and stuff like that. You do suppress things, you hold things back, you hide parts of yourselves, but that is you would still have your memories. um that's very extreme, an extreme cases. So I don't feel like shadow work in this situation would probably be the best answer. I think that probably therapy and things of that sort is going to be your best bet for that. And a lot of times when you go to therapists, they integrate shadow work into your therapy anyways. They just don't call it that. I'm so glad that you feel like you're in such a safe space. So, yeah, I have like a half an hour. Um, do you guys need me to go over anything else in more detail? Was going to do a 10-minute live Q&A. Maybe we can stretch that out. I think that we kind of flew through everything. I was worried I wasn't going to fit it in there. So I think that we covered it though. Um, do you have questions? Give me questions. Let's talk. Talk to me. How are we feeling? Do you feel better about it? Do you feel like you have a better understanding of what it actually is and what it isn't? Because it just seemed like when I posted the videos, the few videos that I've posted on my page about it, I had so many questions that were unrelated to people just seem confused about what it actually is. Is shadow work like self therapy? It can be like self therapy. It doesn't replace therapy in general, but you can, through the process of integrating the shadow parts into your daily life and learning how to cope and how to handle those, that changes your entire being. I mean, it improves how you feel, it improves your stress levels, it improves your anxiety because you're no longer feeling that anymore. It doesn't affect you in the same way. So I wouldn't say that it is therapy, but it facilitates a certain level of healing. Can you give example of how how a session of shadow work would be? Okay, so I I have my prompted journal. So like if I'm using a prompted journal and I'm going to sit down, I'm going to find somewhere quiet, I'm going to ground, um and then I'm going to let my mind wander whatever that prompt is, and I'm going to fill that out, and then after I fill it out and I write it, I'm going to sit with that for a minute. Don't When you go to journal, you have like a whole page, right? Or however much space the journal gives you. Don't try to fill in that space. Just write what pops up at that moment and then take the time to sit with that. Be it a minute to 5 minutes, just sit with that. And then write down anything else that pops up after. If you're not using a journal or cards or something like that, like when I'm not, I do shadow work as it happens. Um, when my kids do something and I overreact, I think about that later. Why, what made me do that? What is the trigger? What happened to me as a child that would make me snap at them the way I did? And maybe that was completely uncalled for. I handle those things in the moment. And once I recognize that, hey, this has become a pattern, because that's basically what you're doing with shadow work. You're uncovering patterns. It's the things that show up in patterns that you want to work with. So if something is happening repeatedly, it's a sure sign that it's a shadow part. And once I've recognized the fact that, like, hey, I've done this a few times now, it's probably not good. That's when I stop. I stop and I'm like, okay, that's not what I wanted to do. Let's hit the brakes, reset myself, come at this from a different angle. And that's how it starts. After you have done that a couple times, then you can kind of start to think, okay, I've now caught myself multiple times doing this. I have tried to come at it from a different angle. Now I want to think about why I do it, right? So then you're going to think on that, like, what would have happened to you when you were a child that would have made this reaction feel necessary? And once you know that, all you're going to do is acknowledge it. There's no work that you have to do with that. You just acknowledge it. Once you acknowledge it, you understand it, you give yourself permission to feel that. And that's when you create that separation. That's when you tell yourself, hey, we're not there anymore. We're here. We're safe. That is no longer the situation. This is where we are now. And once you tell yourself that so many times, yourself starts to believe it. Taught myself to do the opposite of what my parents did to me. I remembered how it felt. Not safe space to grow up in. I'm sorry. Where can you learn safety to being grounded? I'm not sure I'm understanding the question, Christina. Where can you learn safety to being grounded, even if upset? Are you just trying to figure out how to ground yourself even when you're upset? Because grounding yourself doesn't actually have to be like a big, drawn out, like ritual thing. It can be as simple as when you're grounding, all you're doing is bringing yourself back into your present state. Like you're coming back to your body. You're just being aware of where you are and what you're doing. So just feeling your feet on the floor, feeling your weight settle in a chair, touching something around you solid, um, reminding yourself of where you are. Those are all grounding things, believe it or not. Taking a few deep breaths intentionally, that is also grounding. Yeah, if always upset, any grounding. Grounding, exactly. It does not have to be like some kind of crazy over the top thing. Acknowledgement of why something makes you feel or look at something in a certain way. Acknowledgement is the key. Yes, acknowledgement is the key. You do not doing shadow work, you do not have to figure out why you feel that way. It's it's good if you can, but you don't have to. You don't have to fix it. You do not have to get rid of it. You don't have to do any of that. The main thing that you want to do is acknowledge it and accept that that is a part of yourself. And then just sit with that for a little while. Let your body understand that this is what's happening, but it doesn't have to. That's the integration part. Acknowledge it, yes, but also tell it why it doesn't need to do that anymore in the present way. You need to, make yourself know, hey, we're we're not doing that anymore. We're here now. If I'm where I can, I will walk outside and take a deep breath. I do that. I take deep breaths a lot by my car. If things start to get overwhelming in the house, I have 4 boys. If things start to get overwhelming, I'll be like, I gotta go get something out of the car. And then I run out there and take a couple of deep breaths. Built trust by refusing to say yes right away and giving me, oh no. I gotta scroll back up. Sometimes it won't let me. Yeah, it's gonna do that thing where it doesn't let me. Nope, it won't let me. Understand it. Oh, you're very welcome. I'm glad that it helped. The way you speak, the words you choose, even in Facebook videos, all very calming. A lot of people will come off condescending, but you come across so differently. I don't think I'm explaining well, but you do an amazing job speaking and making it feel like one-on-one. Thank you. Aw, you're so welcome. I'm glad that they help. I really am. I get overwhelmed a lot. So do I. So do I. When I notice I've reacted, besides asking myself the questions for understanding, what can we say to the person that hit the trigger to help them understand that you're working on the shadows? That's a good question. So you can just, it depends on how comfortable you are with that person, honestly. Like if it's a stranger, I wouldn't go too far into detail. I would just be like, hey, I know you're like, what stranger triggers you? Listen, when the McDonald's lady screws up after I've told her 3 times. But no, just kind of stop for a second and be like, hey, I'm sorry. I did not mean to, scream at you. I realized what I just did. That's not how I wanted to show up. Let me fix this. Um, if it's somebody that you know personally, that you have a decent relationship with, just be honest with them. Be like, hey, after there's an explosion or after something happens or you've been triggered, just say, I'm finding myself, for whatever reason in an uncomfortable situation right now. I didn't mean to react that way. I have been working on this. I've noticed it's a pattern. I'm doing the best I can. If somebody doesn't accept the fact that you have now admitted it, apologized, and tried to fix it, I mean, I feel like you've done what you could do. That's kind of on them to if I guess it depends. It depends on how big your explosion was. Integration of these principles. Yes. I'm so grateful I found you on Facebook. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. How do you know you need shadow work and not just a professional/therapy? Well, shadow work is not something it's not something that you need outside of anything. here's the thing, like I said earlier, when you go to therapy, a lot of times they work shadow work into your therapy because it does help you become a more rounded whole human being. They just don't call it shadow work. But you you know that you need shadow work when you want. I'm trying to answer this really directly for you because sometimes I have this working on my shadow. Sometimes I have this thing where I divert something, but you know that you need shadow work when you have that desire or that want or that longing to have a better relationship with yourself. Um, a lot of people start shadow work because they feel disconnected from themselves, or they feel people that start shadow work for the right reasons. So a lot of people start shadow work because they feel explosive or they're angry or they have over, these wild overreactions. But shadow work is really wanting to know yourself better, wanting to be more accepting of yourself, wanting to love yourself, wanting to understand yourself and where you're coming from and why you make the decisions that you make. And if that is something that you are wanting to do or that you don't feel like you have that information with yourself or that you have that connection or relationship with yourself and you want it, then do shadow work. How are we incorporating this into our witchcraft? Well, the next time you up and throw a hex at somebody without thinking, no, just stop and ask yourself why he did that. But no, you can work it into your witchcraft. Um, if you sit and meditate in the mornings, or if you are while you're grounding, um, anytime that you're grounding, you're bringing yourself back into the present, and that's the thing with shadow work too, is you want to keep yourself in the present moment, not let yourself stay in that past mind frame. So a lot of it is like perception, mindset, um, affirmations, but don't do like the daily blah, fluffy affirmations. Write your own affirmations that are personal to you, that mean something to you, that remind you that you're not in the past anymore. You're here. You're safe. You've changed something. You no longer have to have that protection up for yourself anymore. It's okay to relax. Give yourself those affirmations. Let yourself think about that. Put that into your self-love spells. Put that um into the work that you're doing, your healing spells, your whatever you're doing. That is an excellent way to work shadow work into your witchcraft. Darkness and light play very well together. I absolutely agree. Oh, that's awesome that you created a whole deck for yourself. I'm not creative enough for that. I mean, I'm creative in other ways, but I don't do like drawing and stuff. I have someone in my life that knows all the triggers. Some triggers go back 50 years. I had to learn not to react, but to engage, not to engage. That was a huge lesson in learning the triggers and retraining myself and coming into the present instead of being constantly pushed into the past. I am very proud of you for that. Shadow work has helped me with my people pleasing. It is a long journey. It is a long journey and it doesn't end. Um, okay, well, that wasn't for me, anyways. No hexing on my end. It'll bounce back. Oh, what was your question? Is it in the question thing? Let me go look. Or if you want, here, I'll go check real quick.
Yeah, it's the last one,
Oh, I
all
did.
the way at the bottom.
Oh, remember it won't. It's still doing that thing. It won't let me scroll.
Hang on,
So,
I'll pull it up.
Okay, is this sort of a pursuit to hold the hand of your inner child, reassure him or her, or let yourself know you're okay now? I've been doing a lot of visiting with mine. It can be. It absolutely can be. It doesn't have to be all about what it's the relationship that you're building with that person that was hurt or that person that was neglected or that person that had to suppress something or change something about themselves or dim something about themselves. And it usually does happen when you're younger, but not for everybody. Some people had really good relationships with their parents and had great parents, and then they got older and they got into crappy relationships as adults, or you know what I mean? But definitely if you had a traumatic childhood, or you're you weren't always able to be the person that you wanted to be around your family and things like that, when you were very young, it can definitely feel like a journey of rediscovering your inner child, letting your inner child know that it's okay, as long as you're still making that separation and that discernment, that where you're telling your inner child, because I know you say, like, you're visiting your inner child a lot. So you just want to make sure that you're telling your inner child, like, hey, I'm sorry that happened to you. It's okay though. This is where we are now. We've made changes, we've moved on, we've grown, we've done things that we no longer have to be that person anymore. Now we can express ourselves. Now it's safe to do the things that we were suppressing before. Hmm. Yeah, it can be. I mean, it could be anything. A lot of people do shadow work caused by trauma that they did experience as an adult. I knew what you meant. Aw, I love it. Okay. Any other questions? I want to make sure that nobody is confused. I'm glad that it helped. I'm glad that everybody seems a lot more clear. I think the biggest thing for me was just I just I wanted to have this webinar as my first paid webinar because, like I said, I saw a lot of confusion on my page, and I wanted people to know, if you didn't take anything else from this, that you don't have to drag yourself through these crazy emotional breakdowns, that these videos go viral and that's the only thing you're seeing, and that's the problem, is that that's the only thing you're seeing, but that is not the norm. You don't have to do that. It is a relationship with yourself, nobody else. You don't have to make anyone else happy. You don't have to dig through it all. You don't have to re-traumatize yourself in the name of healing, because it's not healing. Just take your time, be gentle with yourself, give yourself grace, acknowledge the things that you can acknowledge, and if you're not ready to acknowledge them, you don't have to. Do you have a psychology degree? I don't, but you know what? I always wanted to go to school for psychology. My mom said I would have made a great therapist. You are so welcome. I'm so glad it helped.
Liz, in another project I was doing, I found a whole bunch of these. And I've
Ooh.
got like five, six, seven, eight of them. So I'm going to give them away as well and send them out.
Oh,
They're little, I
yay.
mean, they're little shadow books and they've got some really great prompts in them. So I'm going to pick some names for these as well. So I'll list those tomorrow.
That is so amazing. She is so amazing. She is so amazing. I'm like, I don't know how you make any money. She gives everything away.
Shh.
I love it. I love it. No, I am really happy for you guys though, because I know it had to help a lot. I'm seeing that it helped. I'm seeing the conversations that you're having with each other, and I'm seeing that it helped. So I think it's amazing that she's going to do the journals and stuff, especially now that there's such a better understanding of it. You are so welcome. Best $5 therapy session ever.
right? I agree.
I'm gonna just start labeling them. Come on in. We'll talk for an hour. Discounted therapy, $5.
The witch is in.
Yeah.
Sorry, Misty. Yeah, till tomorrow, but I promise I'll try
Oh,
to get
she said
that
you're
out
gonna make
early.
us wait.
I'll try to get it out early.
That's so funny. Okay, guys. Well, she's also giving away the shadow the I didn't
Shadow
I'm
box.
sure that everyone's seen it by now, but the shadow box, yeah. I I had it here. I don't know where it is. I had it out the other day actually. It's
Yeah,
around this table somewhere. It's probably in the chair on the other side of the table.
it's a really nice kind of road opener. Like opens those paths and blockages so you can really kind of dig into your shadow work. And the guide, gives some prompts, and there's a blank journal in there and a mirror to do some self-reflection. So it's pretty cool.
I worked that shadow work
Yeah, you
box
did. Yeah.
from start to finish, and I followed the instructions exactly because I wanted it to be exactly as you intended it, and it was absolutely incredible. Incredible.
It's a good one. It was our that's our baby. It's where it all started.
It was incredible enough that I have another one now.
Oh, I know. We have another one in the works, and it has a mask with it, two masks. So you draw on when you start and you draw again at the end
Oh
of the
yeah, you had told
transformation.
me about that. I
Yeah, yeah.
remember that.
So it's still in the works. So we're trying to work it out along with everything else. So
Yeah, that's been in the that's I remember you telling me about that. It's been a little bit ago.
been a bit, yeah.
Oh, you're so welcome. We appreciate you too. I am doing spell crafting on the 12th. The
Yes,
12th, right? Yeah.
yes. Thursday.
Spellcrafting on the 12th. That's where we're going to cover basic spell structure, how to build your own spells from scratch. Is going to walk through like choosing your supplies, choosing what to say, choosing how to do your intentions, how to put it together, if your herbs, your crystals, how to do everything, how to build a spell from scratch. So you don't need a spell book. You can build your own.
And I'm giving away something special, Liz, that you haven't even seen yet. It's our brand new box that has not hit the market yet. It's aligning the seven chakras. Wait till you see it. It
Oh,
is spectacular.
guess
You're
what I
getting
just
it next week.
got?
You're getting it next week.
Guess what I just got? I was so excited, you guys. I'm gonna post a video about them because I'm just learning how to use them. But I got my very first tuning fork set.
I love mine. They are fantastic. Yeah.
I'm like freaking ecstatic, and I don't know for sure because it's my first one, so I don't know like exactly how high quality it was, but the price was seemed really good on it. It looks high quality to me. Came in a really nice leather like wrap pouch thing, and then when I opened it, because I was like, I don't even know how to use these, found me a little guidebook right there on top, tells you all kinds of stuff like for the pain, the mental, for pain and stress, mental clarity, aligning your chakras. Like I didn't even know you could use them for all that.
Oh,
I
yeah.
just know I'm a big fan of sound in general.
We should do it before we start spell crafting. We should do a quick, like 1 minute. Everybody close their eyes, and we'll hit the forks. Yeah.
Are they, well, I don't know, will they be able to hear it?
Will they be able to hear it with the sound control? I don't know.
I
We'll
don't
have
know
to
because
we'll
when
have
I
to
when
test
I
it.
strike mine, they're silent. I don't hear them unless they're up
Oh no,
here.
mine are loud.
Oh, yeah, mine don't do that. Not loud, loud. I mean, you can hear it a little bit, but not.
Maybe I'll try mine. We'll give mine a shot.
I think that's amazing because I
Yeah.
love sound. I love bells. I love music. I love singing bowls. My husband got me this amazing set of singing bowls for my birthday one year. Love singing bowls.
Oh, and for anyone who's interested, there's also this Sunday coming up is Intro to Tarot reading. So if you're interested in learning tarot, how to read tarot, that will be with Tam McCain. She's really great.
I have a video for that I'm posting tomorrow
Oh, yay,
too.
yay, yay. So her beginner, the intro is a free event. It's in 4 parts. So if you want to go check that out in the events section in Crowdcast, she'll be there and she'll be doing a 4 part session. And she's ending it with a sound therapy meditation. That's how she ends part 4. So it's going to be very cool.
I love that. Um, I can't scroll up, but I saw somebody ask if you could go watch. I didn't really do like a beginner witchcraft webinar, but all the webinars that I've done so far, you can go to witchsea.com and click the Witchsea Academy tab, and they're all there. So
I'm
you
going to
can
throw the
replay
link in.
those. Um, this one so far has been the only paid one, and then the ones that I have coming up, but I'm still going to work in free ones here and there too. But the ones that I've done prior to this one, they were all free, so you can just go watch the replays on those.
Yep. Travis, if you click that little icon of the people up in the left top corner, if you click it and pull it down, it says events. And then all of the listed events should be right there. And then you can click through and sign up.
Yeah, because the next one I have coming up is spellcrafting, and then the one after that, towards like the end of the month, is lunar magic.
I'm excited for that one. That one's going
I
to be
am
very
too.
cool. Mm-hmm.
I am too.
No, right on this page, Travis, you should see at the top left-hand corner of this Crowdcast page, there's like 3 little people looking dots up in the left-hand corner. If you pull that down, you should see events.
I don't. Mine are going to say $5 right now. I'm trying really hard to make everything that I have going on the page accessible for everyone. I really debated with myself on those songs because I put so much time into them, but I didn't want to make them inaccessible or so expensive that people couldn't get them. I mean, I wanted my time's worth out of them, but I didn't. You know what I mean? I heavily debate. My mom says she's my manager. She calls herself my business manager, and she yells at me constantly because she's like, "You give too much stuff away, or you don't charge enough." And I'm like, "Well, I didn't start it to do that."
See if I can pull this for Travis. Travis, try this one. I'm going to throw a link in here.
Yeah, the add-on spell songs will be out soon too. Right now, the ones that I have done are for addiction, alcohol and addiction for yourself, alcohol and addiction for someone else. So those are two separate, that's two separate energies. Um, and then there's like self-love. There's a money one, attracting love, calling back your power, cord cutting, glamour magic, anger transmutation. I have some deep-seated anger problems. I think I did that one for myself. I know I don't seem like an angry person, but it's like one of those things where it takes a lot for me to snap, but when I snap, it's bad. So, I'm working on that. We're integrating. You're welcome. I appreciate all you guys. I tell everybody I cannot go on. I could go on about my followers all day. I love my followers. You guys are incredible.
They are really great.
I was just telling somebody else that the other day. I was like, there's 52,000 people. I've only ever had to remove one. Like, do you realize how unheard of that is? Like, nobody argues, nobody fights. I don't have any issues with anyone. Nobody's mean to each other. It's freaking fantastic. I don't know how I got so lucky to carve out this little corner of magical Facebook
I know.
land, but
I know. It's
it's
really
incredible.
good.
I'm so thankful for it.
I know, me too.
You
Oh,
guys do like you that's what you don't realize is you do just as much for us as we do for you. You just don't realize it. Like you really do. Helping you guys and seeing you grow and do the things that you didn't think you could do, or understanding things in a more clear way and having that clarity and that confidence and watching people step into their power fulfills me in my path. Like I love it. I love watching it. I've seen so many people just like blossom before my eyes lately.
I remember the first time I saw you on TikTok, I'm like, that's the girl I want promoting my products. And I went after you and you said yes. And I was so excited.
She did too, and I love her. You guys, I'm telling you, I'm all for making your own spells. And I've argued with people before because they're like, I don't I had like I had an entire debate with this guy on TikTok because he was like, I don't understand why witches, you're a witch. Why would you go to another witch to buy something or have them do a spell for you? Just do it yourself. It doesn't make any sense. But like sometimes you can't. Sometimes your mind is too twisted around something that you cannot clearly put intentions into something. I don't cast when I'm angry. I don't cast when I'm sick. I don't cast when I'm so upset that it's bothering me so much. I will have somebody else do it for me. And their boxes, Two Sisters of the Harvest Moon's boxes, I searched, scoured TikTok shop, testing boxes, getting altar in a box, mystery witch box, this, spell kit, that spell kit. I did like one video on each one because that's all I was required to do. But I have like 20 of her I have
Oh my God.
20, more than 20 of her boxes now. And all of them are phenomenal. I had never, I was like, do you realize what you have? Like, you blew everyone else out of the freaking water. Like, it's crazy.
Well, you're getting
Everything
four
is
more.
so thoughtfully and intentionally done that it just blew my mind. And I was like, I will never promote another spell kit. And I haven't, I've done like, restock stuff, herbs, crystal chips, stuff like that. But I've not done any other like ritual spell boxes. I've done like maybe some minor kits, but like ritual boxes, you cannot beat theirs.
Well,
Period.
you're getting ready to get four more. So Lilith, Aphrodite, grief and release, and the seven chakras. It's going to be
If you
beautiful.
if you honor Hecate, I have the Hecate box. The Hecate box is phenomenal.
Oh, I was just, Hecate invokes so much emotion from me. So the mother, yeah. All right, everyone. I think it's time to wrap it up on this high note. And I want to thank you all for coming and hope to see you all at spell crafting and the intro to tarot. Come and check it out. It's free. It's going to be a cool event. She's going to give away some free seats too to some of her paid ones too.
Ooh. See, now you got to go to the free one so you can see about getting the
Yeah,
chance for the other ones.
yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you for coming. I love you guys.